All right, let's get our guy in the mix. Tim Doyle jumping on with some reaction in the wake of this one. Really, Tim, just an overwhelming effort by Gonzaga. We talked ourselves into USC, but from the jump, this one was all dogs. What'd you make of it?
Well, it's one of those games, Joe, that when you watch the first 4 minutes of the game, you just went, oh, this game's over. Like, you could tell right away that this was not going to be a competitive game. And honestly, the last 8 minutes of the game, Gonzaga just stopped playing. They were throwing the ball all over the place. They missed a bunch of threes in this game. They were only 7 of 21 from 3. But when they were focused, I mean, this legit was a clinic. They had 49 points in the first half. Coming into the game, USC was only surrendering 58 points to their opponents over the first 3 NCAA games. And honestly, it's like watching an offensive clinic. And they are old school to the bone, and the tone was set early by Drew Timme, who I thought and a lot of other experts thought that the length and athleticism of USC was going to give Timme problems. Timme problems. He was Conor McGregor every time he scored, he was doing the McGregor dance. It was like, I liked it the first 6 times. I mean, I've been known to beat a dead horse with my jokes and stuff, but man, you got to get like some other looks when you're getting some buckets. He was great in this game. They really had no matchup for him. I've said this before, and I think it's hard for maybe a common person to understand. The game's skill level is higher now. Guys are better shooters. Guys are more athletic. But the game is actually easier to play now. And case in point is just watch how Gonzaga does the old school stuff. Passes the ball, footwork, ball fakes. Like, I know that stuff is boring. And like, if you saw someone at a park just ball faking and jab stepping and setting back screens, you'd be like, what's this guy doing? But basketball's a really easy game, and Gonzaga plays old school. 21 assists on 33 field goals. And honestly, if they wanted to win this game by 30 points, they would have won by 30.
Tim, when you look at the matchup, you mentioned Timme. Let me follow up there. Did this say more to you about maybe Drew Timme's a little better and more athletic than we thought? Or does this say that maybe Evan Mobley isn't the unbelievable force that we thought? Because you said before, look, this is a game where Evan Mobley, this is why you go to college. This is where you make your money. This is where you go the #1 pick. And honestly, Timme outplayed him. And early and often. I mean, too much too soon. What did you make of that particular matchup and what it says about each kid? Or is it just one game you shrug your shoulders?
No, Timme's the better college player. The NBA game's a different game, you know what I mean? And if you see Mobley in that high pick and roll playing with a Trae Young or some explosive point guard, you could see where he's going to be valuable, you know, and the fact that he has a soft touch. And Timme's been around the block. And the fact that he had a chance to go up against veterans, you know, like last year they had Petrusic. He ends up leaving. He actually would be on this roster. That's a scary thought. He just has that old school type of game that, you know, I'm not sure is going to translate to the NBA. The NBA is just a different beast. You know, when you have Kristaps Porzingis, who's a 7'3" small forward, you know, it's kind of hard to kind of put into like layman's terms how big and skilled these guys are. But a college basketball player, it's not even close. You saw who the better college player is. It's Drew Timme. But as far as giant upside and stuff, that's Mobley. I will say this. Timme did have 2 fouls in the first half, but I thought his defense on pick and rolls, because both guards, Isaiah White and Taj Edey, really had no effect on this game. They both played pretty poorly, but they did try to get him in pick and rolls and get him in spots where he had a guard one-on-one. And I thought his one-on-one defense, Timme's, was above average. Because let's be honest, you go on the court, you see the guy with the Fu Manchu, you're like, give me the ball. I can take this guy one-on-one. So you knew they were going to go at him, and I thought he did an acceptable enough job that, you know, I talked about Evan Mobley earning money in this game. I think Drew Timme helped his stock because everybody trusts his passing ability. Everybody trusts his offensive skill set. But the question is, can he move his feet on defense? I thought he did a really good job today. If anybody's draft stock improved, it was clearly Timme.
Tim, you mentioned it a little bit earlier, just the swagger that Gonzaga was able to execute with tonight as well. Timmy's popping the mustache, guys got the handshakes going. Is it possible, like these Pac-12 Cinderellas of sorts, that Gonzaga is still getting better at this point in the season?
I don't know if they're getting better exactly. You know, we thought all year long that this was going to be a 2-horse race. You know, all year long it was Gonzaga and Baylor. An eyeball test, guys, let's be honest. Those have looked like the two best teams in this tournament. When you've watched them, even if you're just a casual basketball fan, you can tell that those two teams are just flat out different. I did think that USC was going to bother Gonzaga's offense. I mean, they didn't even come close to doing that. I mean, they scored 49 points. They only shot 33% from three. I would say this was like a C+ type performance, and they really took the foot off the gas pedal late in the game. I don't know how this game goes under. I'm sorry. If you have over, this was awful, because what they did, they basically went to like running into the line of scrimmage. They just salted this game away and really stopped playing. Obviously, they don't care about that. But my point is, if they wanted to keep scoring, I think they could have scored 105 points in this game. I mean, they got a lead and they went, this game is over, and then they did just enough to eke across the finish line. If you took Gonzaga, you want to talk about a no-sweat winner? I mean, this was never, ever, ever in doubt. Not even like a couple baskets by USC was it ever in doubt. Yeah, there is a lot of confidence. There is a lot of swagger. But when you see that full screen, and I grew up in that era, you know, that UNLV team just oozed. They just oozed like swag. Like they had swag before anyone even knew what that meant. Like they were doing things before anybody else. Like then you saw the Fab Five. They had swag. Like that's when swag was really coming to the forefront. Interesting note, okay? Indiana's the last team to run the table. Perfect record, okay? Larry Bird was on that team. He only lasted 4 weeks in Bloomington. He ended up transferring, going home, hauling trash. Thank goodness he went to Indiana State. But he would have been on that roster. How good was that team?
Yeah, tell me about it. And then he showed up 3 years after that undefeated 76 team, undefeated at Indiana State, and lost in the final game to Magic Johnson in Michigan State, and Judd Heathcote and Greg Kelser in that famous game that I still think for a long time was the highest rated college basketball game that has ever been watched, because back in the day you had 4 channels, so it was either that or whatever else was on the other 3, most likely news or something, so that was your one sports option. If you're now looking, and I'll just make it simple, do you want, I don't want you to be a prisoner of the moment. I know that you're never as good as you look on your good day or bad day, whatever. You want Gonzaga or everybody else right now?
Nah, you want Gonzaga. Here's the thing, Eric. Do you think that they played their best basketball today?
I thought the first 10 minutes, that's hard to play better than that. And then I thought they got up 20 and then sort of just stayed up 20. Yeah, I think after that they sort of, without question, took their foot off the gas a little, had some fun, all that. But the first 10 minutes, that was a business trip, and they took care of business and said to USC, not today.
Yeah, and they just set a tone, and you could almost see the body language of USC being like, oh boy, here we go. You know, I was watching an interview with Corey Kispert, and he says he catches like 3 or 4 opponents every game when they eye roll. Now, I thought that was an insult. Like they eye roll like, oh, look at these guys with the mustache and the Kispert with the hair. No, they eye roll their opponents because they're like, what are we supposed to do? Guard Suggs, he's a top 5 pick. We help off Kispert, that's trouble. We go Timmy one-on-one, like, are you not entertained? Like, what do you want us to do, coach? You know, at the college level, it's kind of easy to point out who's going to get the ball, especially late in the shot clock. But with them, Suggs gets the ball as he drives, defense collapses, and then they make the right basketball play. You know, you could learn a lot if you're coaching a peewee team, a squirt team, just from the IQ of these guys. The game's easy. You know what I mean? Like, pass the ball when you're open. Move if you're not getting the ball. Like, they play really old school, and we're watching a lot of guys who play old school, whether it's Jokic at the highest level or Luka Doncic. You wouldn't call either one of those guys exceptionally athletic, but their basketball knowledge is second to none. So we're watching kind of like bell bottoms coming back a little bit. I don't know if they ever really came back in the 90s a little bit. But like what I mean is like that old school basketball IQ is coming back, and it's effective. We just watched a better athlete in Evan Mobley get outplayed by a better basketball player in Drew Timme. So I love to watch the cycle of it, and there is going to become a perfect basketball at some point because the skill level is much higher than it was in the 80s and 90s and 2000s from individual standpoint. But the game now lacks that smartness because of AAU basketball. The game's not taught at a high level. The guys at Gonzaga play at a high level, and that's why the game's so easy for them. Honestly, if I had to grade their performance today, I'd give them like a B-. First 10 minutes, you're right, Eric, it was probably a A- or an A, but it was just utter domination to the point where they just salted away a game when they really could have won by as many as they wanted.
That's the Northwestern grading scale right there. Tough school.
Yeah.
They're not just handing out A's.
Not like a gym teacher.
They're not
right,
just
that's
handing.
exactly it.
TD, I do want to get your expertise on this as well. Taking a look at the numbers we were staring down, we talked about the total here and how that 8.5 was never in question. That 8.5, in retrospect, seems about as free as it gets. How does a win like this in the Elite Eight, I mean, guys are wearing nets around their necks right now. This isn't the opening round. How does a win like this in the Elite Eight affect the betting market on Gonzaga moving forward?
You know, Joe, I know that your last point was this looks too easy, and it was. You know what I mean? With Gonzaga and lay the points. I think it's kind of boring to pick Gonzaga. I didn't pick Gonzaga in my bracket, even though I've called 25 college basketball games this year, and every time we had to talk around the country, I just said Gonzaga is the best team in the country. I don't think anybody can beat them. But you're trying to figure out a way because, like Eric shows with the full screen, you're bucking history, right? Indiana State, UNLV, Kentucky, no one's been able to do it, go all the way. But as you watch them, I think it becomes more and more evident. And obviously, you want to have some sort of action on the game. But if you're not betting Gonzaga, you got the wrong team. Like, you're just asking for it. You know, if you bet USC today, just take your money, flush it down the toilet. You never had a chance. So learn from that. You can learn from making mistakes, gambling, right? Like, this game was a clear over if they just would have kept playing hard. They didn't, you know, comes up just short of that number. But if you had over, I feel like you had the right side. A lot of time in gambling, you can have the right side, you lose, and they still say, give me your money. Or if you gave them the money before and they say, we're going to take all that money. So I think over was the right play. But as you watch Gonzaga and sides, I think it's really simple. You either bet Gonzaga or you don't bet the game.
Keep in mind, Kentucky was in that spot in Indianapolis, like where Gonzaga is, 2015. I mean, Devin Booker came off the bench for that Kentucky team. He didn't start a game the entire year, and they got beat by Frank the Tank and a couple of guys that looked like they were playing on the, you know, Eastern European national team in 1964. Wisconsin took them down. I was in the building and watched that. Things can happen. You never, ever, ever know, especially coming off a really dominant performance. You sometimes will get a flat spot. We shall see. Should be interesting. Excellent work, Tim Doyle. Appreciate the time, bud.
Thanks, guys.
All right, so there you go. Won each of your first 4 games by 15 points. UConn, 2004. That's the Emeka Okafor Ben Gordon team, I think. I think it was Georgia Tech in the final there that year. Duke, the runner-up, lost to UConn. That's the first of the UConn titles. And then Kentucky, they won. That Kentucky team in 96 was loaded. Like, they beat Syracuse in the final. That was Rick Pitino running it out, Antoine Walker and company. But then you had Kentucky and Arizona lose in the Final Four. So no guarantee that because you're dominant getting to the Final Four that you're going to close the deal in the Final Four.
Want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis. No yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.